I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm Trotter, and this is Eric Noble, and we're splitting this time and talking about databases and web. And happily, neither of us counted on having a live connection. Unhappily, that means we can't actually show you the live websites, but isn't it better that I did screenshots so that I can run it off the laptop? We have an internal web at our law school that we call the server Cardozo, and it's separate from our external web. The web, if you browse to William & Mary and you look at the admissions office and all that other stuff, that's running on a Unix machine and it's separate. And this server that I'm talking about now is a separate box. In fact, it's a box that physically resides in my office right next to my desk. And so that's Cardozo, and it runs on NT. And it has two Microsoft Access databases that sort of back it up. And one's the people database, and one is the events database. And what I'm going to do is just show you the kind of stuff we do with it to give you some idea of what you can do. Any sort of database-driven back-end is just a wonderful thing to have on a website. And we're going to expand this and put it onto our external website as well as soon as that gets ready to handle databases. But really give you the flavor, I hope, of the nice things that you can do with these databases. Now, just so you'll believe me, this is a screenshot of the Microsoft Access database. This is the events. If you know Access, there are tables and queries and stuff, and there are probably 4 or 5 tables, one main table, and probably about 2 dozen queries, and that's true for the other database as well. But you can see for events, the events all have, of course, a number that Access assigns. There's a name of the event, a start date, an end date, a longer description, a contact person if more information is needed, start time, end time, and again, if this were live, I could scroll you over and you can see that there's several other fields, but it's nothing that you wouldn't expect about capturing events in a database. And we use the term event very broadly. I mean, that could either be a visiting lecturer, it can be a class schedule, it can be a summer vacation schedule when somebody's going to be out of the office. All those things are considered events and part of the events database, and of course they're all filtered on the display. And we have all kinds of different ways of displaying it. You can look at events by date, by type. There are about, I think about 20 categories for event. An event can be a conference, an event can be a summer vacation schedule, blah, blah, blah. And there are about 20 of those categories, and you can look at events that way. You can look at them in a list format, in a table format, calendar format, all kinds of other things. So let's show you, this is what the home page looks like. And I don't think the colors are captured very well. But the top of the home page is a little strip of the week's events. This is a little calendar display, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so forth. That's generated automatically from the database. So every day, if you go back to that home page, that's updated for the current day. In fact, although you can't quite see it, the current day, I captured this screenshot Tuesday. Current day is pink and it says today on it. And so it's always dated. Again, it's all running on itself. That's not somebody updating a web page. And then there's all kinds of stuff. I try to make it look kind of like the portals and cram as much crap on one page as we could. That seems to be what the public wants. Anyway, that's what the portals all deliver. So I figured that must be what they want. And it includes a lot of external links as well. I'm not going to talk about the external links, but just as we're doing. But for convenience, there's conference information. The next upcoming conference is the Law Library Conference, and I've got that on there. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that you can just click on that goes to other sites. But just to show you some of the kinds of displays we can get, associated with the weekly display of the current week's events is a button or a click for the whole month, for the following month, and let you pick a month. And what I'm going to do now is do this whole month. So if you were to browse the site as of Tuesday and then click this whole month, you get a monthly calendar display. And again, this is generated out of the database. This isn't, there's no hand coding in this. And the database calculator, the web pages actually calculate what the calendar display format ought to be and when the week starts and weekends, and it actually generates all these things as a table. Puts in all the events. If an event lasts for more than 1 day, it's italicized. So almost all these things are bar review courses, since that's mostly what's going on in the summer and not anything else. So the reason they're in italics is because they're all more than 1 day events or multi-day events. All right, so let's go back and I'll show you some other things. Every page has a little heading at the top, sort of the standard stuff. When we first started looking into this, we thought naturally, well, we ought to have a link for the admissions office and a link for the placement office and a link for the library. And gradually we got away from that and decided that really what we wanted to sort of focus on the things that people would want to know regardless of whether it was part of the admissions office or part of the library, whatever. So as you can see, none of the links really reflect the law school's organizational structure. They reflect sort of the end user things you want to get to. So for example, if you were to click the calendars button on the web page, you get a choice of a whole mess of different kind of calendar displays. You can see law school events all by type. All these are exam schedules, various deadlines, conferences, competitions, visitors, meetings, religious holidays. All those, they're all in the same database, and these are just filters, different queries that pull up different stuff. You can also get them by date, academic calendars. You can also get monthly displays for whatever month you want to see. I showed you one month, and you can pick whatever other month you want. And in fact, if you realize what's going on, you can actually type in the month in the URL line, and it will generate the calendar for that month no matter when it is. I mean, it'll go back to 1850 something, and it'll go up to 2000 and something. So I hope it'll go to 2000. I haven't tested that yet. But just to show you, here's one of the other displays. We're pointing right now to the 30-day events forecast. So when you call that up, you get a tabular display like this. And the system automatically recognizes if an event is either happening today or is continuing today. As long as there's something going on today, it'll flag that, put it in red, and then other events, upcoming events, will be in black following. So that you can see right away what's happening and know that something's going on today because it'll be red. Let's look at another one, the academic calendar for 99-2000. That's a slightly different display, but again, all coming out of the same database, all driven out of the database. And it's the basic stuff that you would expect to see in an academic calendar. And what I don't think you can see very well from this angle is that, if you were to scroll down, you'd see all the spring is just below the screen. This is a nice pale brown, and the spring one is a nice pale green. It's a nice touch, really, but you can't see it on this display. And again, there's some redundancy as there is on every website. Clicking either the courses button or on this screen, the courses and room schedules button, will bring you up a choice of ways that you can look at the course schedule for whatever semester appears. You can see a little bit of the colors. This is actually brown in the real thing, and this is the pale green over here. But you pick your semester, and even these fall semester 99, spring semester 2000, those are generated by code. The first thing that happens when somebody browses the website is a lot of date stuff is initialized, so that the website or the web pages know what year it is, what day it is, when the user's browsing, and it will accordingly pop up the next upcoming semester. So this says 99-2000. If you were to run the same page, if I didn't touch the site and you were to run the same page next January, February, it would have spring 2000, fall 2000, or whatever it is, spring 2001, fall 2001. I mean, it automatically keeps up with the changing semesters. All right, I'm going to start with there's several options for displays, and I'm most proud of this first one, course room time grid, because I spent the most time on that, so I'm going to save that and start with courses by instructor. If you click that box and then said go, show me the courses, you would get a list of courses by instructor, which will tell you who's teaching what and when. And these are all faculty people: Jane Barnard, Ed Bell, Bowditch, Butler, and so on and so on. And again, because it's fall, these are in a nice light brown. The spring schedule is in a nice light green. And that's generated from the events database, as is this next one. I'm going to do courses by type. If you were to pick this one and then say go, show me the courses, you get a slightly different display. You get first-year courses. Down below here it says electives, and down below that it says seminars, and so on. That's the typical way that our administrative staff prepare their paper lists of things, and so I duplicated that on the web display.
I noticed that these are generated by ASP.
Yeah.
And there must be a few SQL commands in there. Will you share the code to this?
I mean, I don't have the code with me to share, but I'll tell you what I'm using, and I'll certainly answer questions, or you can send me an email or something. The whole thing is actually kind of, it's a lot of stuff. Yeah. So when you say .code...
I just took a class in doing exactly this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Quarter in creating an access data.
Okay, well, and that makes sense.
ASP.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
Oh, well, I'll be happy to show you some of it. Yeah, I just don't have it convenient right now. Okay, so anyway, that's another display. Again, coming from the same database as it was sorted by instructor. This is sorted by course type. And now, the one I'm happiest about because I work the hardest on, the room time grid. Many people say, I want to schedule an event, but I really need to know who's teaching what. I don't want to put my event up against corporations because there's a million people who take corporations. So I want to know when that is, blah, blah, blah. I want to look at a sort of a layout of who's teaching what and when. So I give them that as well on this screen, which has all our rooms. These are all classrooms, room 119, 120, and so forth. Those are all our classrooms. And then these are time blocks down here. And then you can look and see what course and what instructor. And this comes out of the same database as the other two displays. It's just sorted and manipulated differently. I will say that it took me friggin' forever to make it do this. But once I got it to do this, I mean, you don't have to do any more. It'll just pull it out that way. And I even, I'm an ex-programmer. I mean, I teach law now, but I used to be a programmer. So I like coding. That's the basic answer. I even parameterized like the slot display is in 30 minutes. That's just a one-line variable. Slot equals 30. If you were to say slot equals 5, it would give you this display in 5-minute increments. And you can add a room in the same way. The number of the rooms are just a little list of what rooms and how many you have. If you build on another room, you just add one little line of code, and it'll generate the stuff automatically. Cool, huh? All right, that's advanced. That's the single database. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about people displays. We do phone numbers, room numbers, all that other stuff. Committees, who's teaching what, blah, 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 blah. And I'll mention how we use the same people database to generate email distribution lists for Eudora, which is convenient because they're churned out now automatically for us. Again, if we go back to the home page, and if you were to click up the people button, you would get a list of choices of things that you could click on to see displays. And basically, there are categories of law school administrators, faculty, blah, blah, blah. By college, I mean the university outside the law school. The other part, apparently there's another part of the campus where we are, and that's what I mean here, and students as well. But I flagged this, and if you click all law school employees by category, you get this kind of a display, which just basically says here are the administrators up here are their titles. And each of these, because the database has email addresses and phone numbers, each of these is hot linked to their email address. So if you were to click on eval, say, it would bring up your mail program, and you can actually click on the whole category and that's a little trickier because I couldn't figure out a way to make a mail to do more than one name, so I had to tie that into something. It's a little complicated, but it actually works. So it works. It wouldn't work for you if you were outside our law school, because you wouldn't be tapping into the email lists the way we can. But as long as you're inside the law school, you can click on administrators from here and send an email to all the administrators. Okay, so we go back and now let's look at committees. Again, either this button up here or this button down here will do the same thing at this point. And you get a choice. You want committees sorted by the name of the committee, or committees sorted by the people's names, or the category, which is what we just looked at. For this one, I'm going to say, suppose you wanted to know what committee somebody was on. Oh, I'm thinking of making Bill Smith the chair of such a committee, but maybe he's already on too many committees. Let's see what he's on. And you get a display of people and the committees they're on, sorted by last name, and here are the committees. And then if it's an elected committee, they all have terms, and so I code the terms into the database as well, so you can see when their time has come. And again, these are all email linked. You can click on Barnard and send an email. Let's get back. Let's see. Here's just another display of faculty. This includes contact information, which is out of date right now because I can't get them to send me the up-to-date information. But basically, this is intended for students. It gives their email address written out, also clickable, phone number, room number, and what their office hours are, so that's accessible to students if they want to find that out. Here's another display of, these are what, administrators, I think. Yeah. Again, all these are cranked out of the same database, as you might imagine. And then because we store summer vacation schedules, which says you're supposed to go to the office from X to Y to Z, I have a little button that says, who's out of the office today? And when you click on that, it calculates who's supposed to be out today and displays it on the fly. Now, this was Tuesday, and these people were scheduled to be out of the office. I checked it yesterday live, and it has me. It says I'm out of the office because I put down on my schedule I'd be away at a CALI conference at this time. So if anybody wants to know who's supposed to be out, if somebody's supposed to be in, you can actually do that. Now, realizes that that link is there, and they may get me to remove it as soon as they do. But it does work. It's kind of cute. Okay. The other thing, I mentioned Eudora, and just wanted to show that the people database, most of what it does and what you've seen is that it cranks out a bunch of web pages, okay, which you can browse. But it also will write out in Eudora format email lists for all those categories like administrator, for all the committees, admissions committee, et cetera, and it puts those on the same server. This is actually the same physical server, but it's two different files. And then the Eudora lists are tapped into by everybody's individual PC. Now, I don't know if any of you use Eudora, but until version 4, you couldn't do this. But now with version 4, you can set up a pointer that says, some of my address books are stored on a separate computer on the local network. And you can just put a pointer in there, and anytime somebody's using Eudora and they ask for address books, some of those address books will come off the central server. And it's a great way to have common address books for Eudora. And you couldn't do it until, I said, version 4, but now you can. So that's what we take advantage of in this system. So for committees, again, this display looks much like the others. You can get committee lists out and people's names and so forth. And those are actually hot linked. Oh, let me go back. Let's see. Yeah, these are, the database that generates these is the same one that generates the Eudora list, obviously. So you can look at it. Let's take Academic Status Committee. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people on it. Grover, Alsay, Heller, Jackson, Letter, Reeves, and Alterno. At the same time that it puts that out, if you tell it, doesn't do it simultaneously, but anytime you tell the database to do it, it will crank out Eudora lists, and that's where this Academic Status Committee and all these people's names comes out of that exact same database. So you know that they're in sync. And that's how you can go to the website and click on the name of the committee, because what it really does is look in your Eudora address book for the name of that committee, and then it pulls the names out of there. But it works. And all these things are generated from the same database, so they're guaranteed to stay in sync. Just a very few details, not many. Believe it or not, I couldn't believe it that we actually did this, but it runs on a Pentium Pro 200. It's about 5 years old. The library had this surplus computer they weren't using, and I said, well, can I borrow it and see what I can do with it? And so it all runs on this thing. It runs NT Server 4.0 with Microsoft's Internet Information Server, and it has a bunch of ASP code, active server pages. I happen to use Visual Basic Scripting because Microsoft Access will kick out a lot of queries in that language already. If I had my druthers, I might have used Java or something, but I didn't know I was going to be doing this when I started. I just was kind of fiddling around with it, and it grew. But anyway, all the code is now Visual Basic Scripting. I also maintain it from front page. I know a lot of people don't like front page, and but anyway, I do, and it's got about 800. We have a total about 800 pages. Yeah.
What version is it?
I think it's 4. I think it's not. It's probably the latest, but it's about a year old, something like that. And I've also set up some, I haven't done this complete yet, but I've got a fair amount of the updating done by secretarial staff through forms on the web page. They go to the form, and it will send it to the database, and the database will deliver to the web page. And then I have a lot of variables that when you first begin a web session, it does a whole mess of date calculation, group calculation, figures out who you are. Everything's logged in. It's all password controlled. It's not accessible generally. But just to give you an idea of what I mean by checking on dates and stuff, this is the code that runs when you first connect to the site and initiate a session. It is not all the code. This is a fraction of the code. But it's all calculating date stuff. I mean, I'm surprised at how hard that was. To keep it updated so that you're displaying the fall of 99 when you're supposed to be fall of 99 or fall of 2000 if it's supposed to be fall of 2000 is tricky. And it's also really hard to figure out when you should show one thing and when you should show something else. Like, if you have a button that says current semester and it's May the 3rd, what does that mean? Or maybe you shouldn't be calling it current semester if it's June. And so a lot of this code is done to sort of figure out what should we be displaying here. And all this stuff is initialized the first time you connect. And it doesn't take long. I mean, you might think there's a bunch of code going on Pentium 200, but actually it's pretty speedy. All the access is controlled by ID and password, which are part of the NT security system. I use the NT's own built-in security of groups and so forth for all that purpose. And there are two basic sets of groups. One is sort of what category are you? Are you faculty, administrator, support staff, library, student, whatever? And another is sort of who has special access. Are you in the group, can add events, can add committees, can update the development office stuff, can update blah, blah, blah. Those are all NT groups, and they're all established as soon as someone logs in. And here's another chunk of the initializing code that's designed to establish that stuff. It sets up what are called session variables in IIS, which is a variable that survives across pages. These are variables that hold up as long as you're connected to the site. But there are a whole bunch of categories: faculty, visiting faculty, administrator, dean, support staff, library, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes through and determines if you're part of that group, or part of that group, or part of that group, or part of that group, and so forth. And all that's done first time you hit the site. You don't see that, of course, but all that is done when you hit the site. Yeah.
What are you using to get ASP to be able to access the NT?
There's a shareware program. I can't remember the name of it, but it's got all the stuff. And that code that you were looking at. Let's go back. Let's see. Let's look down here. If ntg.isMember this user, that's the shareware product. It has a DLL with it that taps into NT.
Okay.
And it's quite handy. So one other thing I want to show you is who has updated permission and stuff and how that appears on the web. We're going to click on religious holidays here just to show you what the display would look like. If you were an ordinary user and you click religious holidays, you would get this display. Basically, there are not that many we have, but there's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, blah, 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 okay, and the details and so forth and so on. And again, these dates are generated live. They're generated by ASP. Okay, if, however, you have logged on and you are a person who has the authority to update events, and that's identified just from your login ID and your password. You don't do anything else. It's just when you log in, and everybody has to log in. Okay? But if you log in with that authority, if you were to click that same button for religious holidays, instead of this display, you would get this display. It's the same data, but it's crammed in, and every single record has an edit button and a delete button by it, and who entered it and when. Entered by a law school root on blah, blah, blah at this time. So if you were the updater, you could edit this thing, you can delete it, just click delete, but let's just for the fun of it, let's say you're going to edit something. Let's pretend we're going to edit the Ash Wednesday religious holiday. So if you click that, you get a form that lays out the name, the start date, the end date, blah, 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 and what category it belongs to, and so forth, and you can change it. So you can change it any way you want to, and then click OK, and it saves it back into the Access database. And it does it on the fly. You know, somebody notified me by email today that there was an error in one of the databases, and I've used one of the lab computers, browsed to the web, brought up this form, corrected the thing, and saved it back, and now it's updated. So that's been kind of fun. Okay, so if you want to try, I'm going to set up temporary IDs and passwords, and this is so embarrassing. The secret ID is CALI, and the secret password is CALI, all in lowercase. And the address is cardozo.wm.edu. So if you want to try it, you can get it from the labs, and that'll be good for I think till Monday, and then you get thrown off. Anyway, so that's what we've done, and we're happy with it. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Do you think you can maybe keep it like for next week so we can show some of our public information?
Yeah. Can you find my email address and send me an email and remind me, and I can do that. You don't have edit permission, by the way.
No.
I'm passing out some handouts. I didn't realize this was going to be a paperless handout, so.
Don't ask.
My name's Eric Noble. I don't think we're doing anything as sophisticated and as wonderful as what Trotter just showed. But nevertheless, I titled my presentation a Fun, Serious, and Yikes Mission Critical, because last year I was here and showed some of the databases that we've designed for our web. And in the last year, they've become so important, so mission critical, that it's been a little scary. PG&E, which is our electrical supply company in San Francisco, had a blackout a week and a half ago. And it happened at 7 o'clock at night, and nobody called me. So at 7:30 I went in, and one of our administrative servers didn't reboot. And so the grades database wasn't operating. The web server was working. And I had 10 emails from students. This was in the middle of June, from 10 students overnight saying very irately, why aren't our grades accessible? And I hadn't realized that the students were even using this database, and 12 hours. So Hastings is a standalone school. Consequently, we have to have all our support services on site. We have an administrative information system, DataTell's CALI product, that we use for all of our, it's essentially cradle to grave, admissions, enrollment, and then the benefactor module for the college relations. The web databases we've developed have been we started out with some ideas to try and create access points to the administrative system, and now we've moved into some other areas. How many people have an NT server that they have in their school, and how many people are doing databases on their NT server? So quite a few. We use Microsoft Front Page for Microsoft Front Page 98 for a lot of the web page development. And what I'm going to show you are some of the applications that we've developed using Internet Database connector files, IDC and HTTX files. And then now we're moving into some of the ASP active server pages. We're not writing the code directly like Trotter is, but we're using a product called Drumbeat 2000, which is
what I would recommend if I were doing it again. Drumbeat.
And so at the end of this, I'll demonstrate Drumbeat and show you some of what we do. The first database we developed was prospect requests. The admissions office was the first to ask for something on the web, and so we set up a form that emailed name and address information to them requesting the admissions bulletin. And when we got up to 50 requests a day, the admissions office kind of screamed help. And so that was the first database we did. And we wrote an IDC file that dumped the request into a Microsoft Access database running on the NT server. And I'll show you how those IDC files work out. Last year we received 2,500 requests. This past year, 6,900. So this stuff just is growing exponentially. The next request that we had was from the admissions office again, and they asked us to do an online application form. So again, we used IDC, very simple stuff. It just dumps the data into a Microsoft Access database, and we use Front Page 98 to actually validate the data, and that works out very well. So I'll give you a brief tour here. This is the admissions homepage. In the first year, we received 215 applications. This year, 386. It's went from 5% to 10% of the applications in 1 year. So again, doubling in terms of next up. The admissions office already is asking for online transactions, credit card, cash, and retrievable applications for students to be able to come back and make changes before they submit. So this is what the online application looks like. There are 3 applications that students can fill out. The general application, a financial aid form, and then the WEOP program has a special application that students who are applying to that program can also do it online. In all 3 applications, there are certain fields that are required, and those are marked with exclamation points. If you don't fill in those required fields, Front Page won't even send the data to the NT server, which is very nice. After the application has been submitted, the students get a confirmation page, which basically lists all of the information that they've typed in, and they can print that out and save that for purposes to prove that they've submitted something in case we lose it. All of that hasn't happened.
For being nasty, but what happens if the student sees that and sees an error? They want to correct it. Is there a way to...
They said not directly. That's what the next step that the admissions office is asking for. But so far, that has 1 or 2 students have written in, and so we can make the changes.
It hasn't been much of a problem.
It hasn't been so far. but they'd like to have that. And then finally, they get a certification form after everything has been accepted, and they have to sign this and send it in with their application fee before we actually process the application. And then when the admissions office processes, it's a very simple process. They go into the Access database, and there's a report that prints out. And the report is very much, almost identical to the hard copy application that's in the admissions bulletin. So the admissions committee was very happy when we designed it to look that way. The next database we put up was grades and schedules on the web. This is done through some CGI programming to the back end administrative system that's on a Spark server. The students use their student ID number and a four-digit PIN number. That's been the hardest problem over the last year. We set this up in June of a year ago. Is the students forget their PIN numbers all the time, and so it's the records office has been very busy taking care of that. Right now we have class schedules and grades, and eventually we want to have financial information, financial aid and fiscal account information. So that looks like that's the schedule. Here's the grades. It was important we put a header on saying, a disclaimer saying this is not an official transcript. We found students were printing it out and using it as a transcript, and so the records office said, please change that. So that's grades. The most recent project that we've been working on is there are a couple of legal research projects at Hastings that have been doing work with immigration studies, and we have the Women's Refugee or the Gender Refugee Project and the Expedited Removal Study. They've been collecting case information from INS departments, INS reports, and putting it all onto the database, and they're very interested in keeping that information into some form and making it accessible on the web. So this project here, Gender Refugee Project, we have a search page set up, and then when you do a search, it comes back with a list of all the cases that match your search criteria, and then you can click on the case number and get all the specific information. This we're doing all on Drumbeat 2000, which I will go into a little bit more detail in a minute. So let me show you some of the back end, what the details are, how we're doing all this. Okay, with IDC, it's very simple. You have the Microsoft NT server running IIS. We're actually using 3.0. We haven't upgraded to 4.0. The ODBC driver is installed on the NT server. ODBC, Open Database Connectivity Driver, is something that you can also, if you install Access 97, will be installed on your Windows 95 computer, Windows 98. And it's basically a way to tell the system what your databases are, and you give a name to them on the system. The IDC files are just little text files that have a SQL statement built into them, and they point to a specific ODBC file name. Finally, you have some files called HTX files, which are hypertext extension files. These just have formatting tags that refer to your fields. So when you want to put information back, present information back to the user who's typing in data, you can use the HTX files. This is how IIS and ODBC work together. The web browser contacts the IIS server, which is told, part of the request tells it what the name of the IDC file is. The IIS server then looks at the IDC file, which has a pointer to the Microsoft Access database, or it could be a SQL Server database, or it could be a separated variable file as well. The IDC file, the information from that is then taken by ODBC. The SQL statement is carried out on the database, data is retrieved, and that's then combined with the HTX file, and the IIS server then puts that together into HTML and sends it back to the user's browser. One of the things we liked about using front page is that you can specify certain validation criteria on fields. In this case, if a field is required, we just simply click under properties for that particular form field, saying data length is required, so that it doesn't, you can't enter, you have to enter something there. And this is the actual code that front page generates using its web boss. Okay, and then in the form, you specify that the action for the custom form handler is that IDC file, so that when the user submits this form, all the data is sent to that, in this case, HASTAPP IDC file. And this is just the server 207.103. That's just the server where the NT server where it's located. Okay, and then here's the IDC file. This is what makes it work. It's just a text file, like I said, that has a pointer to, in this case, the data source is add_mdb. That's just a name that you've set up on your NT server, pointing to, in this case, a Microsoft Access file that's located on that server. The template is just the HTX file that all the data will be combined with to send back to the user's browser. And then finally, you have a standard SQL select statement. In this case, we're just doing an insert into the database, and we're just shooting all the data that's come in from the form into the fields in the Access database.
Question.
Yeah.
And how do you take care of security for the insertion into this database?
In security, in terms of
accessing this page directly, if I were,
Well, the permissions on the NT server are set so that the only access is through these forms. So you can't.
So it's all through NT. You have no other
right.
layer of security.
That's right. Yeah. And then here's the little HTX file that it's just HTML, but you have tags for the last for the names that you're using for all the data fields, so that when you send back that, for example, the certification or the confirmation page that lists all the data that the user has put in, it's all combined into this HTX file before it's sent back. Okay, then let me talk about Drumbeat. And this is what we've been playing with. And Drumbeat creates active server pages. And again, it also accesses data using IIS. Drumbeat has at least to me, it seemed like a very complicated design surface. And it took a while for me to kind of figure out what was going on. In the upper left-hand corner, you have a site management center. And that's just a list of all your files in your website. The Asset Center below lists all of the different objects that you can use in your site design. You have media, which are graphic files, for example. You have queries. All of your queries are listed under the Asset Center. The layout area is where you actually lay out your pages. And Drumbeat creates pages automatically. I'll show you how it does that in a minute. And then you can go in and you can customize them in the layout area. The attic is where content is listed, so that if you have, if you've created a pointer to a ODBC file, that will be listed in the attic area. And finally, the basement area is where the data for this particular form that's in your layout area goes. Some of these slides aren't in the handout. If you want the slides, you can give me your card afterwards and I can send them to you. So when you start with Drumbeat, the first thing you want to do is to create an ODBC source file. And the way you do that is you actually go into your control panel and you run the ODBC applet that's there. On the System DSN tab, DSN is data source name, you click Add and you specify a name, any name you want to use, but have to remember what you want to use, and choose a particular database driver. And they have drivers for Fox, FoxPro. They have drivers for MS Access, SQL Server, all different databases. It's important that if you're doing development on a local machine, that you do this step both on the local machine and then also on your NT server. And you have to make sure that you use an ODBC name that's the same on both systems. The next step is in Drumbeat. You want to create a new query. So you go in and you choose any name you want to use for the query. You specify the data source. There's a drop-down list. That drop-down list will show you all of the ODBC names that are on your system. And if you've done that first screen already, your file name will be listed there. You can then either go into the SQL wizard, and it will help you create a SQL statement, or you can type one directly into this area here, or you can actually copy. So if you're using Microsoft Access, you can, if you create queries, there's a button in Access that allows you to see what the actual SQL statement is. So if you click that, you can copy and paste your SQL statement directly into this box here. The next thing you want to do is just save your query, and after the query is saved, you'll get the query manager come up, and you want to create a content table, what is called a content table, based on this query that you've just created. Okay, the next thing you want to do is to actually create pages, and when you're creating pages that are tied to data, they're called data forms. So there's a wizard that creates all your data forms for you. You can do them manually, but you can let Drumbeat do them for you. So you run the data form wizard after creating a query. You select the content table that you want to use as the underlying data for these series of pages. And then you choose which data forms you want to create. You can have a search page, the result list, which is the results of your search. You could have a page that allows you to update records, to insert records, and then there's not a page for deleting records, but on the update page, you'll have a button that allows you to delete records. And all of those are password protectable. After you're done creating these pages, you can then customize them. You can change the fonts, the colors, positioning of the field elements. And then finally, you publish your site. So I'll show you one. At the beginning, I said there's fun, serious, and then there's mission critical. It seems that projects have a tendency to evolve from being fun to being serious to being, yikes, mission critical. This is still at the fun stage. I have a website devoted to the history of a group in the 60s that was instrumental in the development of the counterculture of the 60s called the Diggers in San Francisco. And the Diggers were kind of in the tradition of the original Diggers in 1600 in England. And they did a whole bunch of things. One of the things they did is they created free stores, and this became kind of an institution in the counterculture, and you go in, and everything was free in the free store. And people would bring all the stuff they didn't want in their house, and they take whatever they want for free. And so on this website, which I have, which is an archive of the Diggers, because they were prolific writers, and the stuff hasn't been collected in many libraries. So I have researchers come to this website from all over the world who are writing histories of the counterculture. Very popular right now. And so I wanted to, one of the phrases the Diggers used was create the condition you describe, which was the philosophy they used for all of the events. They were big into doing events. And they wanted to create the condition that they were trying to describe out of the event. So I thought, well, on the website, I want to try and create the condition I described. So I created a database called the Virtual Free Store. And using Drumbeat, I created this these series of pages. And people can put information in and search and list information. But this is one of the samples of an offering that was somebody sent into the free store, and it's very typical of what free stores used to be like in the 60s. This person offered 4,000 CD jewel box cases. So then here are the finished web pages again for the Drumbeat 2000 site. And let me continue. Okay, summary. Web databases. Demand is high for web databases. Incredible. Lots of requests. The Career Services Office, scheduling, events, people database. And then now very interesting research data, presenting research data on the web. 10% of our web applications from our web form. That's really amazing to me. When I came here last year, I read an article about Dell, and they were doing, they had just set up 2 years previously their website, and they were very happy that after 2 years they were getting 10% of their online orders through their website. And so, so the demand really is there. The future, faster prototyping, we're hoping to continue moving to ASP, Visual InterDev we're looking at, and Cold Fusion. And I'd say try it out. It's very exciting. And there's some further references that are listed on the handouts that I gave out. Any questions? Yes.
Are you concerned at all with performance problems, or have you had any performance problems with Microsoft Access? I mean, have you thought about moving up to Fox Pro or SQL Server or something like that?
SQL Server would be the next step, and so far we haven't had any problems.
Our experience, at least less experience and more what I read, is that Access is fine as long as you don't have very many simultaneous queries. I mean, if they only come here and there, and for our internal web, we only have 500 students, and so it's not a problem. I think if you get to a point where you're starting to get a lot of simultaneous queries, Access will probe, and you do have something like Oracle or something.
Any other questions?
Have you looked at, apparently front page 2000 is supposed to have more database creating and stuff. You guys looked at it? Yeah, we haven't either.
Has anybody looked at front page 2000?
I hadn't done database stuff.
Well, what do you think of it generally?
The Explorer and the editor are built into one piece, and supposedly it did on me, but also I had one of the earlier betas, but it's supposedly not supposed to alter your pre-existing code, and that was the most important thing. Yeah. Because it ruins your code most of the time.
Especially if you're using pages like something created from Drumbeat. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was my question. I guess how well does Drumbeat work with front page, since Microsoft products have a tendency to step on everything else?
I don't bring the pages into front page. I just do all the development in Drumbeat, and then I just publish the pages on my web, and I just have pointers to them in the front page web pages.
You're absolutely right. Front page step all over anything. For a while, we were trying to have people use Netscape Composer because they were comfortable with it and they knew what they were doing. And it's got to be all front page or nothing. I mean, it just won't work to combine them. Now, maybe front page 2000 is better, but front page 98, it's all or nothing.
That's very neat on
That's a good point. Yes, if you go into HTML mode in front page and save it, then that works. Yeah.
This is actually Trotter. What do you use for coding?
The front page.
Oh, you do it all front page?
Yeah, I just stuck with it. It has plenty of drawbacks, no question about it. And if I basically started with what I could do on the cheap. And front page is pretty inexpensive. And I'd probably rather use Visual InterDev or something a little more powerful and more sophisticated about site management. But front page has site management tools, and so it works. And I've decided that everything has got to be in front page. I did have it eat my code a few times, but somehow I've learned if you do it right, it won't. And so I just stay with that.
You can also put HTML code into Access documents.
Yeah, I've done some of that too. The other thing I found out is when it wants to screw up your lines, you can make up fake tags and fool it. And I have a lot of tags that say nothing, in nothing. And by surrounding surrounding some stuff that front page wants to screw around with, it will often not screw around with it anymore if you have these fake tags around it, because it makes it mean something. So,
I was interested in what other databases other people have developed. Would anybody like to mention something?
I'm at Indiana University, and one of my big parts of my job was maintaining our World Wide Web virtual library, which was this huge drain of my time because we have over 5,000 links and we get anywhere from 50 to 100 submissions each week. And it was just me having to put all this in manually pretty much. And in January, I got a student web worker to put it all in a database. And my administrative time is nothing now. It takes 2 seconds to click and say add, delete, fix, and the links are just there in the database. As far as simultaneous users, we were testing out, how many people can be clicking before it'll crash, and it's a lot.
This is Access?
We're using not Access because
that's why it doesn't crash.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So what is it? What is it? What's it?
It's an SQL database using freeware. We couldn't get the school to pay for database servers. We got freeware and run it just on a regular server, a Unix server. So we're hoping to try to put in the push to get more money for the project because it's just really saved administrative time. And I can train a student now to do a lot of the administrative things really easy. It's all forms. The secretary can sit down and do anybody. You wouldn't have to have any HTML to maintain this page. We also took course descriptions and course schedule and put those all in a database and have them relating to the faculty web pages. So for any faculty member, you can pull up what courses, the descriptions, the schedules, similar to the stuff that you were showing, Trotter. But if you have a big website with a lot of links you have to maintain and correct, a database definitely.
That's a great idea.
And I know very little about this database, but you can get a student to do it pretty cheap.
Any other? Yeah.
I want to ask about scale. You said even though Access has been big and powerful enough for your student population, just between different databases. I'm asking because I've just started playing around with active server pages like that, like our law school phone list with phone numbers and room numbers and email addresses, and our career services listings, which are a few dozen things. And it's not searchable, it's just an active server page that pulls it up out of query. But I'm getting ready to start on our public service program catalog, which is 180 some listings, quite a lot of information. I want to make it searchable by various criteria. Still using Access, but I wonder, I'm just kind of wary about moving on to a larger scale setup like that, but still staying in Access, just from your experience, that kind of leap. Anything I need to watch out for?
You should follow because you'll have more information. We have 500 students, but the students, by and large, we haven't actually tried to get them to use this yet. So what we're really talking about is about 30 faculty members and administrators, 50 maybe if you add everybody. So I can't really say. And we're going to, on this fall, we're going to start telling students to use it, and then I'll find out. But you've got more.
When is your session, Joel?
An Oracle session I'm giving tomorrow, just before lunch. I'm going to address some of these questions I'm hearing.
And I think you went from Access, didn't you, into Oracle?
We went to Oracle for several different reasons. The primary reasons had to do with the fact that our university is going to be heavily involved and already heavily involved in that. But the work that we had done with Access, I ran into the same ASP problems. Never problems with scale necessarily, because we never really got there yet on that before I decided that there's no way we're going to be able to manage, basically, in the environment with what I'm doing. We were doing and are doing a total replacement of a lot of programs, not just picking individual, here's one thing that we can pick out that someone wants for admissions. but, which I'll talk about tomorrow, but a replacement of a lot of software with the full-blown Oracle server.
The other thing I might say is that I view Access as sort of the get started. And, you know, in theory anyway, it's all SQL queries, and you ought to be able to just migrate it over to an Oracle server or something when you get it. And our intention is, we've just completed, our university has just completed an RFP for a major human resources thing, and it's going to be something that runs on Oracle or something like that. And I'm going to try to port the stuff over. And I think most of the logic of the code will work. I gather I'll probably have to tweak a little bit some of the queries. But I just viewed it as, I can get started, I've got it on my machine, and if it works, we'll move it up at some point.
What about some other databases people have used? Yes.
We wrote a request system for our own department, and we put it on the internet. So you want to request a service from us, and you fill out that form and type and the best guess, you know, that they have as to what they think the problem is or the need. And then I can assign those calls, or my staff can pick those calls up, and track, you know, several thousand requests over a period of time very quickly. You know, it's amazing how you get a nice searchable form now that you do research on as well.
Does it automatically send back some sort of email?
Yes,
saying
when we assign it sends them an email that says it's been assigned to so-and-so, and when it's completed, you know, you fill out your notes and send them an email.
That's a great idea. What else? Yes?
I schedule my office hours. Do a database information. I also done a couple of questionnaires that self-collect data, and then the data is already in the database when it's still forward down.
Do you present the results back, or do you just...
Not to the students. But I mean, that's just because the researchers.
Right. Yes.
We've got 3 searchable databases that the University of Law Library. We've got one for internet sources, and you can search it by keyword, category, and then alphabet. And then we've got one also for our movie collection, video collection, and that's got 250 titles in it, and you can search by keyword, and then there's an alphabetical listing. And then we have legal quotes, and that's like 310. And you can search by keyword, author, and I think that's 3 and 2 we've got on there. So we've got 3.
And what are you using for the back end?
Well, we're using Access for it, and then ASP.
Anybody else?
At the University of Wisconsin, we've done a lot of what I guess other people are doing, course description schedules, things like that. But the campus recently went to PeopleSoft for student records, and PeopleSoft couldn't handle our internal anonymous exam numbers for students, which is how faculty graded students. So we needed to build a kind of middleware system where faculty could enter grades via a web browser, pulling the exam numbers from our database, and then take that database and somehow shoot it to PeopleSoft. And the somehow shooting it to PeopleSoft leg is not exactly done yet.
So other than the fact that the data is not getting to PeopleSoft, it's really working.
That hasn't been solved campus-wide. People are still submitting grades on paper, and they're being inputted into PeopleSoft. So we are able to generate paper reports out of our database and send those to the registrar, which is, you know, just as good as what everybody else is doing. But in the future, since PeopleSoft is built on Oracle, we might try to interface directly somehow.
I might be able to help with that tomorrow as well. There's a couple of products out there which will really make that movement a lot easier than you might think.
Good, yeah.
There's a hand up there.
Alex Stetson, we've got an email directory and also career services jobs listing. We also have a movie database for like 500 movies with links to the Internet Movie Database for each title, all with access databases.
How do you restrict access to the jobs listings?
Oh, well, we restrict the NT access to the actual page where you look for the job listings. You know what I mean?
So do you restrict access just to the students?
Excuse me?
Just to students?
Right, just to students. But one thing that I've been running into with access, and maybe this is like a technical question, but I can't search memo fields. Is that true?
That'd be true.
We can search memo fields.
Yeah, you can search, you just can't index stuff.
Sure.
Search text fields.
Memo fields, yeah, they're searching. I don't know.
However, you can't ask it to give you unique records if your records have a memo field in them. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about.
We also have an electronic library Rolodex where librarians can input something that they would put into a paper Rolodex, and then it's searchable on our website. And that's really just for librarians' use. But one thing that's really nice about this whole database idea is that, like XML, it separates the content from the presentation. So you can have one person do the HTML, and then a million other people just input data, and it goes on your database.
We've had so many good ideas. I think what we need is like a bank of shared applications. A lot of great ideas. There's a couple back here.
Yeah, we do alumni record, searchable by state, last year, area of practice.
And that's through the web or alumni access?
Alumni click on it, fill it out themselves. We also have someone keying it in from the external affairs office.
I want database, a full text database was about 6,000 documents now, growing steadily of European foreign policy, which is searchable via the web on date fields, title, keywords. And that runs in a basis class database, which is similar to Oracle. There's a commercial front end. And it's perhaps interesting that the database is running in Florence and I obtained it from Boston.
One more?
Yeah, we do our career services on Access, and we password protect jobs that are a week or newer, so that only our students can see the new jobs, and then after a week they're opened up. But I found front pages to be weird. If I edit one of the ASP pages, there are certain fields that it replaces text with the field name. So if I don't fix it before I save it, I go back and it says, lists like name, but then it says database last name. Database telephone. It's consistent pattern every time I open one.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a database for government documents on the shelf list, and we use this software called ISIS Web. It's basically a data warehouse. It goes through and just is able to read and access database. So it's kind of neat. They can access multi-documents.
ISIS Web.
Two small, non-controversial choices that we did. Some are left address labels. All the different departments use that for some address labels in different formats. When students are on site, it's accessible to the web. It's how it's secure information. So it's pretty easy. And the other is career status. There's law school specific information that the General Central University is going to count on. ABA requirements for writing and all that. A secure form there, but from day one, you can at least give fair notice, or at least claim you gave fair notice, but then they graduate.
Well, thank you very much. We got a little bit over time. Thank you very much.